Hey everyone. This video is on what foods and beverages you should eat and what foods and beverages you should not eat if you have hemorrhoids. Now, we're not going to get into the specific details and pathophysiology of what hemorrhoids are in this lesson. If you want more information, please check out my full lesson on that topic. But this lesson is entirely on the best foods and beverages to consume and the foods and beverages you should avoid to help improve the symptoms and complications of hemorrhoids and help reduce your risk of getting them in the first place. So, the first foods, or the first category of foods I want to talk to you about here, include foods that contain high fiber. And the evidence demonstrating that high fiber is beneficial with hemorrhoids is very strong. It comes from multiple studies, including a large systematic review and meta-analysis entitled Fiber for the Treatment of Hemorrhoids Complications. So the reason why a high fiber diet is so important if you have hemorrhoids is because increased fiber consumption has been demonstrated to reduce symptoms, especially bleeding. Trials on fiber show a consistent beneficial effect because it helps reduce the chances of constipation. Straining from constipation is a major factor that can increase the risk of developing hemorrhoids and worsen the symptoms you already have. The goal you want here for fiber intake is at least 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. Now, what are some good sources of fiber? Legumes. Foods like beans, lentils, and peas are excellent sources. Just a half cup of cooked lentils can provide around 8 grams of fiber. They contain both soluble fiber, which softens stool, and insoluble fiber, which adds bulk. Whole grains. It's important to choose whole grains like oatmeal, brown rice, quinoa, and whole wheat bread. Refined grains like white bread have had their fiber stripped away. Vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and leafy greens are packed with insoluble fiber, which helps keep your digestive system moving. Root vegetables, sweet potatoes, carrots, and white potatoes are also good sources, but you want to make sure you eat the skin, as that's where much of the fiber is. Fruits. Pears and apples with the skin on are great choices. Berries are also fantastic because they have a lot of fiber for their size. And of course, prunes are well known for helping with constipation because they contain both fiber and sorbitol, which helps draw water into the gut. Now, something else you want to do if you have hemorrhoids is you want to increase your water consumption. The water acts along with the increased fiber. It helps the fiber do its job to soften stool and prevent constipation. Without enough water, a high fiber diet can sometimes make things worse. You want to aim for adequate fluid intake, enough so that your urine is a pale yellow color. So those are the important categories of foods and beverages you want to consume. But if you have hemorrhoids, the next several foods and beverages we're going to talk about are things you want to avoid because they can worsen symptoms. So one of the first categories of foods you want to avoid includes low fiber foods. We just talked about high fiber foods being important, so you want to reduce your intake of their opposites. Low fiber intake increases the risk of constipation, so you want to avoid low fiber foods like white breads, pastries, and other products made with refined white flour. Many processed foods like fast food, frozen meals, and chips, which are often very low in fiber and high in sodium. A high sodium diet, especially when it replaces fiber and you don't drink enough fluids, can contribute to the hard stools that worsen hemorrhoids. Heavy red meat consumption, especially without high fiber side dishes, can contribute to constipation for some people. Dairy products like cheese and milk can also be constipating for some individuals, so you want to pay attention to how your own body responds. Next, a category of beverages you may want to limit if you have hemorrhoids includes alcohol. Alcohol consumption has been found to be a risk factor for hemorrhoids. While it doesn't directly cause them, alcohol is a diuretic, which can lead to dehydration. This can cause your system to pull more water from your stool, and making it harder and more difficult to pass, which leads to straining. So it's best to limit or avoid alcohol consumption, especially during a flare-up. Similarly, you may want to be mindful of caffeinated drinks. For some people, caffeine can act as a digestive stimulant and increase the frequency of bowel movements. If this happens, it can reduce the time between each bowel movement, which can lead to increased irritation and reduced time for the adequate healing of hemorrhoids. The key here is moderation. Now, there's also this question as to whether individuals with hemorrhoids should avoid red chili peppers and spicy foods. And the evidence on this actually comes from a randomized controlled trial entitled Red Hot Chili Pepper and Hemorrhoids: The Explosion of a Myth. It was once believed that red chili peppers could exacerbate symptoms of hemorrhoidal disease. But that randomized controlled trial I just mentioned actually didn't find any evidence of worsening of symptoms like bleeding, pain, or itching with consumption of red chili peppers. But I want to mention a caveat here. While spicy foods may not be a direct cause, they may worsen irritation for some people if they cause increased diarrhea or more frequent bowel movements. As I mentioned before, that increased frequency can cause irritation. So in individuals where spicy foods cause a lot of increased bowel movements, it's probably best to avoid them during a flare-up. But for individuals where this doesn't happen, it's likely not an issue. Fixing your diet is a very important step, but a few other habits are important for healing and relief. First, add fiber gradually. If you are going from a low fiber to a high fiber diet, a sudden large increase can cause gas and bloating. So you want to increase your intake slowly over a week or two to let your system adjust. Second, don't strain or linger on the toilet. Straining increases pressure on the veins. Sitting on the toilet for a long time, for instance while scrolling on your phone, allows blood to pool in that area and can make hemorrhoids worse. And finally, for some immediate relief, you can try a warm bath or a sitz bath. Soaking the area in plain warm water for 10 to 15 minutes a few times a day can be very soothing for inflammation and irritation. To summarize, you want to focus on consuming foods that are high in fiber, like legumes, whole grains, vegetables, and fruits, and you want to ensure you have adequate water consumption. At the same time, you want to limit or avoid low-fiber processed foods and be mindful of things like alcohol that can lead to dehydration and constipation. So, if you want to learn about other digestive health topics, like foods and beverages to avoid if you have irritable bowel syndrome, please check out my lesson on that topic. And if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing and clicking the notification bell to help support the channel and stay up to date on future lessons. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.